Hello and welcome to another episode of the Strettycast. I am Dale O'Donnell, your host, and this episode I will be discussing that boy Ronaldo, United coming from behind to beat Omonia, and why Anthony Martial must start this weekend against Everton. I'm on my own this week, as you'll notice. There's no voice from Sean, no voice from Brian, so bear with me as I try to reflect on this game without the help of a conversation as such. But the game against Omonia, for starters, was a nightmare in the first half. I think that's been part of everyone's analysis of the game. The first half was almost a write-off. And what I wanted to touch on was some of the reactions we were getting on social media at halftime, because I remember tweeting saying, the first half was awful. I was trying not to use any swear words, but yeah, at that point, I did not feel that Manchester United weren't going to go on to win the game. Now, upon reading some of the reflections on Twitter, and I must add, there wasn't loads, it was just a small few people, but they were beginning to kind of show a lack of patience with the manager, and I guess losing their patience with the manager. And just to go back to the point that I made about the game itself and at half time, and regardless of how shit the first half was, I never felt that we weren't going to win the game. I felt we were playing against a bog standard team from Cyprus who playing low block. I think they were happy just to be at that occasion, and they weren't expecting much in the game. But I was expecting that their legs would wear out. They'd start breathing through their arses after 20 or 25 minutes in the first half, and we'd eventually cut through them. That's what happened with the help of some substitutions. But by no means do I think this game we're going to be looking back on it in 2 or 3 months' time. We got out of there with 3 points. Performance was sloppy. I think what's very important is we came out of the game against City, which was a disaster, and we got back to winning ways. And it's crucial that we continue that again on against Everton at the weekend, because we need to get back on track in the Premier League. It's absolutely crucial. But some of the players too against Omonia really didn't show themselves in great light. I mentioned Jadon Sancho on the blog in the past week after the derby, and I just mentioned that he was kind of too passive in his defending when he was tracking back against City. Paul Scholes mentioned it as well after the derby, that he wasn't carrying out his defensive duties. So I just think he's a player that really needs to wake up at the moment, because not only was he terrible in the derby, but you look at someone like Sancho, who we signed from Borussia Dortmund as a real up-and-coming talent from the Bundesliga, a really exciting player. I still think that about him. But you look at the game last night against Omonia, Europa League, against an average team, and when you have world-class players, they don't have to play well, but you can still see glimpses of what they're about. And you looked across the wing to Anthony. Didn't have a fantastic game, but you could definitely see he has a bit about him. There's a bit of class about him. Sancho did not show anything at all, and games are kind of catching up on him now. I think it's been 2 consecutive poor performances. He started the season well and got a few goals to his name, but I just think with players returning from injury, Anthony Martial, and I think Ten Hag finally beginning to get hold of his favourable front three, that Sancho might need to do a bit more. I think he needs to do a bit more. And just on that, Paul Scholes was on BT Sport after the game, and he said, "I don't think Sancho ever really runs in behind. He is a player that needs somebody to play with. He needs a fast left back if he's playing on the left hand side. He also needs a centre forward to link up with, and he hasn't really got that." Just on that last point, I know you can't reflect too much on what happened during the pre-season tour because there were friendlies and players weren't fully fit, but there was definitely signs on the tour of Australia and Thailand that with Anthony Martial in the lineup, that Rashford and Sancho, they're all linking up really, really well. And I go back to what I said a few moments ago about Ten Hag eventually having his favourable front three together. Now we're going to start to see these players playing together, and hopefully with Anthony Martial leading the line over the coming weeks, Sancho will get another chance and to prove himself, because I think what Scholes touched on at the end of that comment is that he hasn't really got a centre forward to link up with, and I think that's really true. I think that is the case. United, you can see the clear difference when we start games, which there hasn't been many, but when we do start with Cristiano Ronaldo, and then the difference when we kind of start someone like Sancho or Martial, which we're going to see more of. The difference is night and day. And I know Ten Hag has been kind of questioned about not starting Cristiano Ronaldo or even leaving him on the bench. But I think the people asking Eric Ten Hag these questions, I think they know the answers themselves. Anyone watching that game against Omonia knows why Cristiano Ronaldo is not getting the minutes that he used to get, which we'll eventually get onto in this podcast because Ronaldo's a separate talking point. Another point that I wanted to get on with the game was, I think Nicosia was made out to be a scapegoat last night for the first goal. Overall, looking at how we conceded the goal, I think for starters, United were far too ambitious. The scoreline was 0-0, and we had everybody in Omnia's half attacking the corner. Secondly, the ball finds its way to Sancho on the opposite wing. Now, there's a lot of players in the box, and at that point, you don't want Sancho going backwards. Never mind passing the ball backwards. And he goes backwards and gets involved in a bit of traffic. Plays an awkward pass back to Nicosia, who, look, you could say should do better. I think when he's caught, he should definitely pull down his man and commit the foul and not allow Omonia to catch United on the break because we had no one back. And that I guess comes with maturity and experience. And Nicosia is a young player we brought in. He's pretty raw. And I've been very, very impressed by him. But I think we are going to see games where he drops in standards because young players do not have that level of consistency yet. But from what I've seen, I definitely don't want to go back to seeing Luke Shaw starting games. And I wouldn't be surprised if Shaw started the weekend, but I'm talking week after week. I think Nicosia is a better left back and definitely has a high ceiling to become a top left back in the Premier League. But I do think Nicosia was meant out to be a scapegoat for that goal. Yes, he didn't cover himself in glory. He should have committed a professional foul at the very, very least. But again, going back to Sancho, needs to wake up. United were attacking, there was players in the box. Do not go backwards. There was no need to recycle possession whatsoever. And it caught the rest of the team then as well. But that goal, you cannot concede goals like that. It was too reminiscent to the goal we conceded against Istanbul in the Champions League when they caught us, when Dembaba caught us on the break. You can never, it's inexcusable. If you're managing an under-12s team at local level, that's inexcusable. You cannot concede a goal like that, and you train your kids to not concede goals like that. But this is happening to Manchester United. It's recent memory. We're calling back a previous similar episode. Recent memory. So, look, there's a lot to be said for that goal. I don't think we should be just pinning it on Nicosia, who was, I guess he was caught flat-footed, but he learned from that. But Sancho, I think I expect a lot more from. And just before we wrap it up on the game itself, I think we have to kind of mention the impact that Rashford and Martial made off the bench. Both of them were absolutely terrific, and it was excellent to see because these are players. I think the first goal, just before I go on, the first goal from Martial really, really summed it up for me because it came from an amazing ball from Lisandro Martinez, the centre back, who I thought was really, really good, especially his passing was fantastic. But he plays that ball forward to Rashford, who flicks it on to Martial, then goes forward, shoots and scores. But if you watch that goal back again, if you go back to last season even, Rashford's not flicking that. Well, he's going to try and flick it, but he's not completing the pass. Secondly, if the ball gets to Martial, he's not finishing it. These players are showing signs that whether Ten Hag has put them under their wing, but he's definitely working with them. He's definitely giving them belief. It's something they didn't have a year ago. And it's almost reminiscent to the season we finished second under Ollie. It's 2019-20 when our front three consisted of Rashford, Martial and Greenwood. And I know Greenwood's not involved, but it's nice to see flashbacks of good form from Rashford and good form from Martial. And Martial we're going to talk about it a bit later because I think he really needs to start the weekend against Everton. I think this form warrants a start. He's after getting a bit more minutes on the pitch from the derby and then the game off the bench against Omonia. He's ready for a start, and it's not like Ten Hag is going to have any problems leaving someone out of the line. You know, it's quite easy who you leave out. Moving on, speaking about who I think should be left out, Cristiano Ronaldo. I think this is a matter, by the way, you could call it a crisis for his career, because Cristiano Ronaldo probably doesn't accept that his best place right now is on the bench of Manchester United. You would imagine the way Cristiano Ronaldo has been throughout his career, pushing for the very, very top and pushing for the best and competing at the highest level for so many years, that this is probably hard to accept, that what's happening right now. I think there's a number of things as well. There's some personal issues, the loss of a child. It's a difficult time for Cristiano Ronaldo for his career. But just to touch on a few points to why I think Erik Ten Hag is actually fading him out, and he has to be very careful how he does this. And we've seen with previous, down the years of Manchester United, previous players and big name players, when they kind of push on, it's not always easy to push those players out. You look at Roy Keane when Alex Ferguson did it, ended up with a big fallout. The two of them still don't speak to this day. It's happened with a number of players. And I think, touching on the press conference before the game against Omonia, there was a bit of beef which I enjoyed with the Guardian reporter Jamie Jackson, because during the press conference a lot of the journalists were interested in asking questions about Cristiano Ronaldo at the weekend and being left on the bench, and there was a lot of questions. You have to understand where the story is stemming from. They're looking at it from the point of view that Cristiano Ronaldo earns nearly $500,000 a week, and you're benching a player on that kind of money, and that's why the reporters want to ask Erik Ten Hag the question. Fans watching, we can understand from simply watching 90 minutes of football why Cristiano Ronaldo is not coming off the bench against Manchester City. And I know Roy Keane and the sorts have kind of come out kind of almost in kind of a fanboy manner defending Ronaldo. I can't get my head around it. But Roy Keane, like I mentioned, is also a player who left Old Trafford under a cloud, and he almost kind of suggested that things will get nasty. It did for Keane. Sadly, it didn't. You'd hope that it's not the case for Ronaldo. But with the bit of beef that Ten Hag had with Jamie Jackson on Wednesday, Jackson kind of said he was confused by Ten Hag's response that he didn't bring Ronaldo off the bench out of respect for his big career. And he kind of put it on Ten Hag that, you know, have kind of same respect for someone like Martial. It doesn't really kind of add up. You know, why would you bring Martial off, not show him respect? You know, you're paying someone so much money to win football matches. That was the argument. But Ten Hag did not want to give away too much in response, even though he was being pinned down and asked a question for maybe the umpteenth time. He didn't want to give away too much, because, like I said, when you're fading a player of the personality and the stature of Cristiano Ronaldo, you're going to upset people if you come out guns a-blazing and kind of come out boldly in the press and say, yeah, he's not good enough. That will create more problems, I think. So what Ten Hag kind of said in response was, I think you know why. He didn't give away anything, but he said, I think you know why. And that was interesting because, look, I don't think it's hard to get your head around the fact that Ronaldo is approaching on 38 years of age. He is coming to the end of his career, especially at the top. I think even today, the suggestion that if he was to leave Manchester United, that there would be interest from Galatasaray. Now, Galatasaray aren't even in the Champions League either. So it's just more telling. Even in the summer, we had reported interest from Bayern Munich, from Chelsea, and Napoli, clubs that are in the Champions League. But when it came to making a formal proposal to sign Ronaldo, it didn't happen. You know, so were they really interested? I'm just not sure. There's a question we have in from a listener and a contributor to StrettyNews.com, Matt Henderson. Is it over for Ronaldo? I think what I've been just touching on with the suggestions about Galatasaray and the lack of interest really in the summer when he was available. I think that suggests to you that yes, it's over, because you look at the wages Cristiano Ronaldo was on, and then you consider the age. So clubs in the Champions League, if they were to look at Cristiano Ronaldo, it's a costly investment for 12 months while you're in the Champions League. So Napoli, for instance, I don't think it would have been feasible for them in the summer, and that's why they didn't do it. And then you got clubs, the elite clubs like Bayern Munich, and I don't want to say Chelsea, but they won the Champions League in recent years, so you kind of have to. But they would look at it like Thomas Tuchel didn't want to change his football style of football to suit a 37-year-old. You know, it's a perfectly logical reason for not wanting Cristiano Ronaldo, and I think United kind of fell into a bit of a trap, and the scary thing there is that Ollie was manager at the time, but Ollie didn't have a say in the matter. And these are things that with a new manager now in Erik Ten Hag, you just hope doesn't happen, because I don't think Erik Ten Hag 12, 13 or 14 months ago, if he was the manager of Manchester United, would have been happy at what happened. I think he would have had a different view on it to maybe Ollie at the time, but look, there's no point crying over spilt milk. So I also want to add as well with what I said about Roy Keane's comments. A lot of these people coming out defending Cristiano, ex-teammates and so on, seem to be forgetting the disrespect that was shown towards United in the summer, because Cristiano left United at the end of the season, leaving the club under the impression that he'd be back and he'd be here next season and fulfilling his contract and what he signed. Then we had it midway through the summer, we had Jorge Mendes making efforts to manoeuvre an exit and kind of catching United on the spur of the moment. And it was bad timing, because at that time you would have had clubs around Europe would have already known what their targets were for the summer, and they weren't going to rip them up for a 37-year-old. Just not going to happen. And Jorge Mendes kind of, I think it came back to bite him in the arse, and that's why Cristiano never went public at the time. I don't think he promised an interview, actually, if you remember. He promised an interview in 2 weeks prior to the deadline, which I don't think we ever got. But yeah, look, I think there was disrespect shown towards Manchester United. He returned on pre-season, at the end of pre-season, with his agent at Carrington. You know, that was a middle finger to the club, and it was a clear sign that they were there for talks. So I'm not really one here for defending Ronaldo at the moment. I don't think he's covered himself in a lot of glory in recent months, and whether you think he's going out on the pitch and doing it for Manchester United is one thing, but there's a lot of people that think he's going out on the pitch and doing it for himself. And maybe he got away with that in his earlier years when he was the best player in the world. But to go back to Matt's question, is it over for Ronaldo? I think 100%. That game against Omonia last night, it was sad to watch it. Sad reality of what has happened. But is it sad? Yes, it's sad to see a player that you've watched for years at the very top then go backwards. But this happens every professional. You know, he's going on 38. This happens players in their mid-30s or even early 30s. Ronaldo's been at the top for so long. So, look, maybe sad is the wrong word, but his time is over at the top. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up in the summer when he eventually leaves United again. Just on the final point then, Martial must start against Everton. Said this a few times already in the podcast that it's a must. It's a must. He's back from injury and he's easily United's best striker. Easily. He's after scoring 3 goals in his last 2 games, which were both substitute performances. And I think that's telling of a player who is in the right mindset, especially when you consider how people have questioned his mindset for so many years. And rightly so. His work ethic could be questioned at times. And I think when Anthony Martial wants to perform, when his head is in the right place, I think he's unbelievable, and I've no doubt in my mind that he can lead the line. But it's just I'm hoping that, looking at his age now, 26, that he's kind of thinking I'm at a career crossroads, And Eric Cantona joined Manchester United when he was 26 as well. So bit of a French connection here. You'd hope it goes similar ways. But what I'm saying is he's reaching a point in his career. You'd hope that he's going to knuckle down now, listen to his new manager, and buy into his ways. Because if it doesn't work out this season at Manchester United, other clubs that may be interested don't have to look too far to see that he didn't quite work out at Seville when he went to Spain on a 6-month loan last season. So I think this is a crucial time for Martial. I think he's shown goal scoring instinct. That goal he scored with his head against City, to be in that place, to run in after a shot was taken, and to get into the back of the net. So most importantly, these are signs that Martial is firing at the moment. And I think the front three should be, actually, matter of fact, Anthony, Martial and Rashford. No Ronaldo and no Sancho. I think, see how that goes. I'd be surprised if it didn't work. And I reckon we really, really need to go to Goodison Park and to make a statement, not just with a result. We need to start performing good. We need to start showing the kind of football Ten Hag wants. And maybe that's difficult at the moment because we play so many long balls from the back and we haven't got a goalkeeper who's comfortable to play with the ball at his feet or to come off his line. I mean, that will come. That will come over time. But right now, I guess it is most important to get results. But it would be nice to see a good performance under our belt. And I think it's Everton side. They're in good form at the moment. They're unbeaten in their last 8 games. So it won't be easy. That's it for this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the Stretty newsletter also, which is available at stretty.substack.com.